Private companies who manage industrial scale timberland and private consultants who often work with smaller scale non-industrial private landowners hire technicians to accomplish this type of work. These jobs are located where the forest products industry is concentrated. So this includes the southeastern states for sure, New England and upstate New York, the Lake states, and the Pacific Northwest in particular. Federal agencies like the U.S. Forest Service hire technicians as well at entry-level pay grades to work on inventory and timber marking crews, or as recreation or wilderness specialists. State agencies, particularly in the Southeast, often have job openings as well. In North Carolina, these would be the assistant county ranger positions and county ranger positions that we discussed earlier. Seeking out formal internships is a great way to approach the larger forestry companies for employment. Oftentimes, the smaller companies and consultants hire based on regional contacts and recommendations. So the more that you can get out to professional meetings and get involved with organizations like the Society of American Foresters, which we'll talk a little bit more about at the end of the lecture here, the more professional contacts you can make. Sometimes it just takes picking up the phone and being proactive and expressing interest to a local consultant while you're a student to see if they need any part-time help, if that's the type of work you're looking for. The federal and the state agency jobs are posted all the time. You just have to be diligent about looking and applying. The thing to keep in mind with agency jobs is that getting your foot in the door is the most important thing. You have a lot more latitude later on after you've been with the agency for a period of time to move to a specific location or region of the country that you would rather work in, or into a particular job. Something I also try to stress is that right after you graduate, depending on whether or not you're coming right out of high school or whether you've been working for a while before coming to college or making some kind of career change, the amount of forestry work experience that you can include on your resume may be pretty thin. Employers recognize that you've been in school for 2 years, but they want to see that you approach your schoolwork like you would approach a job. So sometimes how you performed in school is all a potential employer has to go on when they're judging how ready you are for the particular job that they're advertising. The world of wildland firefighting is broad in and of itself. As a wildland firefighter, you may have the opportunity to work on a hand crew, installing fire line with chainsaws and hand tools. You may work on an engine or a brush truck. If you stick with it, you may have the opportunity to work into more specialized operations positions like smoke jumper or helitack crew member. By its nature, full-time fire control work is seasonal. So outside of fire season, depending on the agency, firefighters often engage in project work like fuel mitigation treatments or prescribed burning or trail construction. That usually makes up the balance of the year. Fire control work is strenuous and inherently dangerous, but also really personally fulfilling and rewarding. There are national level training requirements established by the National Wildfire Coordinating Group, adopted by both federal and state agencies, and physical fitness requirements that vary by assignment and workstation as well. It's essential that you have the ability to function safely and productively in a high-stress, team-based environment. Outside of the fire line positions, there are numerous overhead positions that handle incident planning, incident mapping, logistics, finance, and some more specialized positions like fire behavior analysis. Those are roles that you may have the opportunity to work into as well over the course of your career. At Haywood Community College every year, I try to piece together a student fire crew to work in cooperation with our state partners like the North Carolina Forest Service and the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission to assist with prescribed fire work and fire suppression if needed. This slide here shows a student lighting a backfire off a control line on a prescribed fire project with the North Carolina Forest Service in Graham County in western North Carolina. Just a picture here as the low-intensity backing fire makes its way down the slope. There are some private contractors that offer firefighting employment, and they tend to be concentrated in the western part of the country. Most full-time fire control positions are housed within the federal agencies. In addition, there's I think just over 100 interagency Type 1 20-person hand crews, also known as hotshot crews, that are administratively attached to different agencies, to individual agencies, but they're a shared resource when it comes to fire control. They're shared between the agencies. These crews consist of highly trained, full-time, professional wildland firefighters, and they travel extensively during fire season to various incidents throughout the country. Some western state forestry agencies have full-time personnel dedicated solely to fire control. California is an example of a state that has a really robust wildland fire control setup. Most eastern state agencies, the North Carolina Forest Service as an example, rely on their employees for both forestry duties and fire control duties. So county rangers, for instance, are responsible for both landowner forestry assistance and fire control within their county. As I mentioned earlier, whether you are a federal, state, or private employee, the National Wildfire Coordinating Group in Idaho sets the training standards for different positions. S-130, firefighter training, and S-190, Introduction to Wildfire Behavior, are the initial classes that you need to take and pass to be hired as a firefighter trainee. We offer those courses here at Haywood Community College. They're also often offered through local volunteer fire departments here in North Carolina in conjunction with the North Carolina Forest Service. The states vary, but if you work for the North Carolina Forest Service, you need only to pass S-130 and S-190 to work on the fire line in an official capacity. All the federal agencies, even for temporary dispatch as a state employee on a federal incident, require firefighters to pass a physical fitness test known as the PAC test to work on the fire line. Your red card is issued once you have satisfied those requirements, and it's updated accordingly as you gain experience and different credentials. If you're interested in this type of work, our counties here in the mountains of North Carolina have part-time crews that are administered by the county ranger. Those crews are a good place to get some fire line experience. And entry-level federal jobs open up every season. You just have to be diligent about in applying for those jobs, and also have to be flexible regarding the location and the specific job duty. Every year, a few students express interest in pursuing a career in natural resource-based law enforcement. By its nature, law enforcement opportunities are public agency-based. Agency law enforcement personnel generally have full enforcement powers and may enforce fish and game regulations, federal land use regulations, and agency-specific administrative regulations, in addition to the full suite of more general law enforcement duties that they're tasked with performing. The U.S. Forest Service employs special agents and uniformed law enforcement officers. They're tasked with maintaining the rule of law on national forest land. Fish and game laws are generally enforced by state agencies. In North Carolina, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission is tasked with enforcing those laws. Similar to fire control, at the state level, some agencies have employees dedicated solely to law enforcement, like the individuals on the slide here from the Maine State Forest Service. Some states, North Carolina included, allow some personnel to have limited law enforcement capability, while there are a few full law enforcement officers located throughout the state. County rangers in North Carolina have the ability to enforce the law as it relates to state-imposed burning regulations and things like that, but they don't have full law enforcement capabilities. There are several law enforcement officers employed by the State Forest Service across the state, but there's very few of those positions. law enforcement jobs typically require training beyond what we offer in our program here at Haywood, and the required training just varies with each agency. The Wildlife Resources Commission in North Carolina has a 19-week training program with a 6-month on-the-job training progression. But first you need to be accepted, which is difficult. There's a lot of people who apply to be accepted in the program, and very few slots just to get into the training program. So any previous law enforcement experience, in addition to any natural resources training, is beneficial when applying for these opportunities.